fear of losing a parent was something I often thought about, even as a 6-year-old, for whatever reason. Even the thought of it gave me this heavy feeling of abandonment. My mother, who was a very good person with a beautiful heart with great intentions, but growing up she was unorganized and all over the place the way that feminine energy often is. I was usually the last kid to get picked up from school, and sometimes it would be so late that the staff would get upset because they wanted to go home. On those days I would imagine that something bad happened to her, or maybe she got into a car accident. When I was 9 years old, my dad was 36. I don't know why I remember these numbers so vividly, but for whatever reason I do. I remember being in the passenger seat of his car and seeing a single gray hair in his beard. I asked him about it and he jokingly said, "Yeah, I'm getting old." I sat there for a few minutes in silence, contemplating what he said, and the idea of this giant of a man growing weak and old and eventually dying. I started crying. I was a pretty sensitive kid. My dad asked me what was wrong. I just looked at him and said, "I don't want you to die." He then smiled and reassured me and said that everybody dies, but usually it's very gradual and he's going to be here for a long time. Not knowing that just 8 years later I would tragically lose the one person I looked up to and loved more than anyone. My dad killed himself a few weeks before my 17th birthday. There's a lot of detail I could go into, but in a nutshell, my dad was losing his business, he was facing potential jail time, and was worried that he wouldn't be able to support his family. The life insurance policy that he had happened to cover suicide, and he was aware of that. It all unraveled so fast just months before my family was together and mostly normal. And then suddenly all these events unfolded, and my entire life and the lens of which I saw the whole world immediately changed. My little comfortable bubble of a life shifted completely. The funny thing is, the money that my mom received from the life insurance, she didn't really have experience with dealing with finances, and she ended up getting pulled into some scams. That money just ended up disappearing anyway. My father had this calm, masculine, loving energy that I'll never forget. He had a temper that could be scary at times. That's definitely something that I inherited and had to learn how to harness and redirect towards my purpose and goals over the years, as opposed to just suppressing it like our society often wants men to do. But now when that temper or fiery energy arises, I can harness it and be intentional with where I put it. One thing I'm grateful for is I got to spend one last Thanksgiving with my dad about a week before the tragic event. And one of the last things he ever said to me was, "You know, if anything ever happens to me, you get my car." He said it in such a lighthearted, joking way, I didn't really think anything of it at the time. And to this day, it's the only car I've ever owned in the last 20 years, and the thing just keeps miraculously running. At least at the time of me publishing this video. Even though I've mostly healed from the grief of losing my dad in that way, one of the things that keeps me up at night is just knowing that there's tons of men out there who are in a dark place and don't know if they're going to get on the other side of it. They don't know their worth, or they've convinced themselves that the dark season that they're in right now is going to last forever. Unaware of what they're capable of enduring and not knowing the level of potential that they have inside of them. I think it should be our mission through example to show them that they matter, that you're here for a fucking reason. And even when it feels impossible, like there's nothing left to live for, that there's a light inside of you that knows no bounds. Human beings, whether men or women, have such a capacity to feel heavy emotion. And the way that the masculine and feminine deals with this emotion can be very different. Men keep a lot of things inside. They tend to wrestle quietly with their demons internally, while the people in their life, friends, family, co-workers, might have no idea the potential dark solutions that they're plotting. The suicide rate is 80% men. It's arguable that there's just as many attempted suicides by women, but the success rate isn't anywhere near what it is for men. It's said oftentimes for women that it's more of a cry for help as opposed to a genuine suicide attempt. If a man, however, decides to end things, then he's usually successful in that. If you're in a dark place right now, my hope is that this video can bring you some kind of comfort and to show you that you're not alone. You are me and I am you, and we're in this thing together. But it's not to coddle you, Quite the opposite. Chances are you need to wake the fuck up and realize the vast amount of potential that's inside of you. If you're watching this and found your way to this video, then more than likely, the impact that you're meant to make on this planet is far beyond the limitations that you've created for yourself or have been given to you by society, the beliefs that you've been conditioned to operate from. You are a vital and valuable piece of the puzzle of human consciousness, and we need your gifts. The intelligence that created the entire universe decided that you get to have a whole life. A beautiful human lifespan through all of its ups and downs, beauty and pain. And I believe that the darker the season is that you go through, the more beauty will emerge on the other side of it all. None of this is an accident. All of the pain, all of the loss that you've felt is forging you into the man that you're meant to become. And just by growing into that man, you end up healing others, simply by your presence. Every loss, hardship, or heartache is making you into the person that you're meant to become. The powerful, strong, conscious, compassionate man that's waiting to emerge. As human beings, there's only so much we can understand and communicate with our minds and limited language. I had an 8.5 gram mushroom trip a while back. Let me know in the comments if you want me to go more in depth on that. But in that experience, I saw this web of everything being interconnected and everything happening exactly the way that it's supposed to, pre-planned by some kind of higher intelligence. But then at the same time, every human being having free will and free choice and full responsibility for their lives. The human mind has a hard time accepting that two things that are seemingly polar opposites can both be true at the same time. The idea of a paradox is really hard to accept. But I do believe that things happen for a reason. I believe that if you're watching this right now, that you have a purpose and gifts that are unique to you that the world needs. You could be feeling hopeless right now in whatever capacity. You could feel like you're losing your business, your family, your identity. But there is an intentional unfolding that is happening, and it's pushing you to realize and discover your gifts and how you, as a unique puzzle piece, fits into the big picture. It's usually very gradual, uncomfortable, but completely necessary in realizing your potential. You can either become the hero or the villain. The only difference between the two is the story and perspective that they choose to adopt based on their heavy past. This is a controversial opinion. I do think that clinical depression can be a real thing, but I think in 90% of cases of men's deteriorating mental health, there's often something much deeper and spiritual happening. A large majority of men are living their lives with unprecedented amounts of suppressed potential that's never been given a chance to realize itself. Naturally, there's this conflict inside of them between what society and their conditioning wants them to do and what their inner core deep down is telling them is right. And in most cases, I think it's all subconscious. And then after years and years of trying to fulfill those desires through porn and video games, and instead of being the hero in their own story, obsessing over random athletes and sports teams, what these men and my father had in common is hopelessness. My dad had an intense season of concentrated hopelessness that he couldn't see past, while many other men have a more dull, sustained hopelessness that just wears on them over time. And both kinds of hopelessness can lead you to a dark place. Life is cyclical. Dark nights of the soul will come, and I don't say that lightly. These are seasons where your entire identity can feel like it's falling apart. These seasons are rare, but they will come, and with it, the fear that they will never end. Let them forge you and burn away the husk until all that remains is your true essence and your purpose. Again, the world needs your gifts, what you and you alone have to offer. I want to end this video with a quote by Marcus Aurelius from his Meditations. The more I've internalized this, the more I've noticed my own fear of death decreasing. I've been seeing more and more that this life that we have is just a drop in the ocean, a blip on the radar, and then it disappears. And it's beautiful. It's a gift. To welcome with affection what is sent by fate, not to stain or disturb the spirit within him with a mess of false beliefs, instead to preserve it faithfully by calmly obeying God, saying nothing untrue, doing nothing unjust, and if the others don't acknowledge it, this life lived with simplicity, humility, cheerfulness. He doesn't resent them for it and isn't deterred from following the road where it leads. to the end of life, an end to be approached in purity, in serenity, in acceptance, in peaceful unity with what must be. Everything in life is happening for you. Let it forge you. Wait patiently until you're on the other side of whatever difficult season you're going through. Keep your head up, lean into the divine masculine inside of you, and follow that inner voice of purpose and love.